Hey, greetings, everybody, and welcome to Conflict Radio. Today is February 21st, 2021. It is President's Day here in the United States of America, and I couldn't think of a better way to kick that off by doing a show about Canada. And we're going to have Dave Scott join us. So let me give a shout out real quick to everybody who's in here. I see Arlene is here, Sapphire Elf, Wendy Williams is in the house, Blue Chicken, Magnus Zetquist, Mary Kay, Wagon Breath, John Clark, AJK is here. Creepy Little Book. How you doing, Creepy? Pete, I'm going to reach out to you. We got to get you back on the show. Renee Cruz is here. Coral Ann. Casual Conversations with G&A says hello. David Gosling, how you doing? I've been reading your comments, man, on all these past videos you're watching. Man, awesome stuff. Don Juan is here. Davy Jones Locker. Too much information. Kathy Dudley. Let's see who else we've got. Little George. Scrolling up. So if you want me to say your name, write it down. Stefan Gaja is here. Let's see. Not Quite Human. How you doing, Paul? Arlene Adkinsell. I said you, I believe. Man, you guys have been in here chatting it up for a little while. Chuck Bam is in the house. And let me scroll down and see if anybody has commented real quick. I see Brian Griggs, Don Juan, Polo Cisneros, and 42. He loves it when I say his name. I always get all caught up. And so today we're going to be talking about Canada, what's going on up there. And we're going to get an education lesson in Canada. And Dave Scott, I'm sure everybody's familiar with him. We all love and respect Spaced Out Radio. What an awesome show. Dave Scott is the creator and host of Canada's Spaced Out Radio. Dave's personal quest into the unknown started in December of 2011 when he had contact from what he calls the angel of death that he saw in his mother's eyes, which led to his first channeling experience. After this incident, Dave's personal experiences started becoming more frequent. Paranormal experiences, premonitions started coming true. A Bigfoot sighting with two of the creatures within 100 feet of him. UFOs started appearing anytime he wanted, even though Dave had no idea what summoning was. Personal sightings of 5 extraterrestrial species, one who he's nicknamed Carl. On November 30th, 2014, Dave launched Spaced Out Radio. His near decade as a journalist helped him craft his style of interview, making it comfortable and personal for his guests and listeners alike. It is a great show. My wife and I listen to it all the time. Sometimes I'll pop into the chat because I don't really, I got to open up my phone to do that. Sometimes I'll pop it open and say hi to him. And sometimes I don't because I'm watching on the Roku, but we're normally watching every night. Dave, welcome back to Conflict Radio. It's been a while, man. How are you?
Mike, thank you so much for having me, man. And I appreciate you always taking the time and the kind words you say about our show. You know, I'm a big fan of yours as well. And, thank you so much for doing this. We haven't done this in a long, long time, but I'm glad to be back with you, man.
You know, it's been a while, and sometimes we get caught up, and I've been trying to keep people that I know or I guess respect kind of out of the loop because we've been doing some shows on my channel and talking about some things that I guess the algorithms really don't like. And I guess since Christmas, I had an epiphany on Christmas, and I'm like, I've got to start talking about what's on my heart because I can't keep it in anymore. And I started doing that, and we've made it this far. And with this whole Canada thing with the trucker convoy and everything else, it's been so heartwarming to see. All right, I'm going to try to put this in the. I guess what I'm going to try to say is, and this is kind of how I want to start it off, is growing up as an American. I don't think that there's any country that feels more as a brother, as a sister, as a family member than Canada does. Canada, growing up and being neighbors with you guys has been such a blessing to us because you're like us. You just want to live your life, be free, and not be pushed around or be dictated to, or I guess kind of like us. And we take advantage of the awesome border that we have with you guys. I mean, it seems like it's wide open. Nobody ever talks about building a wall between Canada and the United States. I mean, you guys, we love you guys, man. We do.
And you know, the feeling is quite mutual. I have family in the United States. I have a bunch of friends in the United States. I have a ton of our listeners. I mean, 85, 86% of our listeners are in the United States. The, you know, look, we like to tease each other, about us not being American, and we bug you about, the free health care up here and everything like that. But I mean, it's all in good fun. And I don't think that Canada could survive without our American brothers and sisters. And I don't think America could really survive without Canada being here as well. I mean, this is what makes this beautiful continent that we live on so great, is that we do have a lot in common, and we can share each other's beauty, we can share each other's friendship, and we can share each other's quest for wanting to be the best that we can be at everything that we do. And I have nothing but good things to say about the United States of America. Sure, we tease, sure, we kind of go off a little bit at times, and there's going to be things that we agree and disagree with. But on the flip side, there's no place that I would rather live than in Canada. And if I couldn't live in Canada, I would want to live in the United States. And it's one of those, we live in one of those beautiful melting pots that very few people get to live on this planet. And damn it, man, we're lucky. We are completely lucky. I mean, people don't understand, I think, around the rest of the world, how blessed we truly are to be kind of solo on this continent with Canada, the United States, and even Mexico for that point. And we are just so blessed with where we live on this planet. I mean, could you imagine, living with all the conflict that we see in the Middle East, or in the, in Asia, where they're still battling communism, or some places like that, or in Africa, where if you're the wrong religion, I mean, you could be slaughtered. I mean, being where we are, I mean, it is incredible where we live, and we share a lot of good things. We share an incredible border that isn't closed, where you pretty much have to go through a police lineup in order to enter a country. I mean, it really is beautiful. It really is what we have, and I think we've taken that for granted for a long time.
You're exactly right. We're born into this freedom that we have, right? We've got, and it wasn't easy. That our ancestors fought tooth and nail for us to be able to be born and raised in this. I'm a kid of the 80s. I was obviously born in the 70s, but I was a kid of the 80s, riding my bike around, and hearing my the street lights go off, it's time to go home, and that sort of thing. We never had to worry about rocket fire from border states or other countries that happen to be next door to us that we didn't get along with. I mean, it's almost like you said, we've kind of been spoiled, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we don't know what it's like around here to say, have places like the Gaza Strip, or to be ruled by the Khmer Rouge, or some of these horrid places that there is continual conflict in the world today. And politics aside, the military industrial complex aside, we really are blessed with what we have. I mean, sure, we have let's not sugarcoat anything. There are problems. There's way too many homeless people. In Canada here, there's way too many First Nations reservations that don't have clean water. I mean, you look at down in the US with Flint, Michigan, not having clean water. I mean, these are things that need to be repaired. I mean, up here in Canada, we have our skeletons, much like in the US, you have your skeletons. But overall, when you look at the bigger picture, we're pretty damn lucky with what we have. And at times you have to wonder, is it being lost? Are we in a shift in the political movement? Are we in a shift with everything that's going on? And hey, change is uncomfortable for many people out there, including myself. I hate change. I hate, I'm always been a big believer of, if it isn't broken, why fix it? And sometimes that tinkering takes a radical turn at times. And that's something that we, as a society, we don't pay much attention to, and we do need to pay attention to those things. you know um it's a tough place right now. And I know up here in Canada, I've never ever in my 48 years on this planet seen my country as divided as it is today. And I don't know what to think anymore. I know it's depressed me. I know that it has caused me a lot of headaches. I've spent more time on Twitter and social media the past 3, 4, 5 weeks than I have in probably the last couple of years. I mean, we need to figure out what's going on, and we need to get back to loving each other and caring about thy neighbor, right?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the powers that be have been trying so hard to divide the people, and not just of Canada, but I mean of this country as well. You know what I'm talking about? I mean, it's divide, 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 and you're either with us or you're a. I mean, goodness, can I even say it? Like you either believe what we say or you're a racist, or you're a white supremacist, because you don't agree with our political policies. I mean, is almost ridiculous, and it's working, isn't it? Is it not working? People are dividing.
Yeah. You know what? There's a real hypertension that seems to be going on around the the world right now. And if we focus on North America, one of the things that I see is, ever since social media came out, we have seen and especially Twitter, because Twitter is something that is supposed to be very up to date. What we have seen is, we've seen this I'm offended crowd grow and grow and grow, that we want to be hyper sensitive on absolutely everything. I mean, now let me preface this, that anything I say today is my opinion, and it's not that of Spaced Out Radio or SOR Media Ventures, or I'm not speaking for anybody else on my team. This is just what I have seen happening. And I don't speak about it on my show. Part of the agreements I have with my terrestrial radio affiliates, along with my digital affiliates, is that we don't talk politics, we don't talk COVID, we don't talk a lot of that stuff. The reason being is, and I've kind of ruled it with an iron fist in my own chat rooms and everything, isn't because I don't care about what is going on in the world. But the one thing that over the last few years, even before COVID, you know, we have come to a place on this planet where uh, we're not allowed to express our opinion. And if we do express our opinion, you get labeled. You get labeled, and I don't understand where this is coming from. I don't understand where people want to take a picture of something and base everything solely on a photo, where they don't understand what happened around that photo. I blame journalism and today's mainstream media for that. I blame social media, especially Twitter, for that. I blame a society that isn't wanting to evolve for a big portion of that as well. And there are so many things happening over the last 6-7 years on both sides of the border. I mean, I don't even know where to start with this, Mike. I really don't.
Yeah.
It's difficult. It's hard,
All right.
and
Let's start with this because and we're going to get into the whole, and I'm going to say this because where we're at right now, my wife is always telling me nothing's going on because we follow this war that's going on. And if you can understand that there's a war going on between the deep state puppet masters and the free people of America and Canada, because you got to understand that if America falls, the whole world falls, right? So obviously it's in, here we are in Canada, right? It's in Canada. So where's it go next? It goes to us, right? So whatever, I mean, our convoy is starting today. They're all supposed to go shut down the Beltway, and the truckers are gonna sit on the Beltway in DC, and we'll see how that goes. But the whole thing is, my wife's like, oh, there's nothing going on. There's no such thing. This war's not going on. I'm like, babe, like, there's about to be a civil war in Canada. Something is going on, like a civil war in freaking Canada. You know what I mean? Like, it's almost, how can you even hear that? But let's start from the beginning, Dave, and let's talk about this convoy that obviously started. You had a bunch of truckers headed to Ottawa. I mean, obviously fighting it, and we don't say the word on this channel. We call it the cure, okay? For what they're mandating. They're mandating everybody to get the cure, right? You know, in quotes, right? Haha. And the truckers are like, you know, screw this. Like we don't want to do this. Like, we have a right not to, you know, I mean, first off, it's against the Nuremberg Code, right? You know, second off, like, it ought to be up to, and this is what I agree with, you know, I don't care what you do. You know, I'm a pretty liberal guy, honestly, myself, and you know, I don't care if you want to live with 5 other you know, or you know, marry who you want, you know, sleep with who you want, you know, do what you want. If you want to sit there all day and you know, put shit in your nose or put shit in your veins, I don't care. You know, just keep it out of my house. You know what I mean? Like what goes on in my house is up to me, but what you want to do is up to you. If you want to do something in your house, you ought to be allowed to do it in your house. Like, you know, I mean, I'm pretty liberal when it comes to, you know, doing what you want. And even with certain should I say abortion practices, you know, I think up until a certain time, you know, is what I think, you know, what that time is, you know, I don't really want to share, but I don't think that you should be able to get an abortion at 9 months pregnant. You know, I don't think that's right at all. You know, I think that there ought to be a time on it. What it is, I mean, I don't know. I mean, we need to come together as a people and figure this stuff out the right way. I mean, if a baby can live outside of the mother, then I don't think she should have the right to terminate its life. And I believe that with anybody's life, you shouldn't have the right to terminate anybody's life. And I think that the death penalty shouldn't stand either. I think you know, maybe, you know, if you get locked up for the rest of your life, then that's on you. But I don't think anybody has the right to take anybody's life if you can, if they're breathing and able to live on their own. And you know, I don't know where you stand, but it seems like these truckers, they had a good cause, didn't they?
Well, I'm going to start off, and you said a lot there. I'm going to start off by saying that, you know, up until the other night on Spaced Out Radio, I really don't talk about my political position on anything because it's really irrelevant to the show. I did the other night. I am what you would call a hybrid between a liberal and a conservative. And when it comes to my conservative values, it's more regarding around business. Okay. I have no problem with seeing billionaires and trillionaires. I have no problem with that because in the end, they made um, major investments and sacrifices that paid off. And there's some of the lucky ones who've worked hard and made the right choices, and their choices panned out. What
Yeah.
kind of people they are, or what kind of people they've turned out to be, that can be judged by humanity itself. But I'm very liberal when it comes to people's rights. Okay, I believe a woman should have the freedom of choice. I believe that if you're part of the LGBTQ community, that you have the same rights as I do.
Yeah.
I believe that if you are coming to this country for a better life because you come from an impoverished nation, guess what? My door is open to you.
Yeah.
I really want to see people succeed, and that's the beautiful part of what Canada and the United States are all about, is allowing people that opportunity to live the dream. I mean, I look in my little community, dude. My little community where I live is maybe a couple thousand people. Okay, most of the doctors have immigrated here from Africa. I know my own family doctor. He's from Sudan, and his wife is a former Miss Sudan. And we sit down, and he tells me stories about when he lived in Africa and how, as a child, he was almost killed by a hyena. And I'm just enthralled with it. And I think, why would you come to piddly little central British Columbia where it's cold 6 months of the year? And him and his wife and their children love it here. I mean, my son's school has East Indian children in it. It has black children in it. We have a beautiful melting pot of a community. As I kind of said as a joke on my show the other night, the one thing that pisses me off about our wonderful Sikh community here in my town is that they haven't opened up an Indian restaurant yet. And I love Indian food. And if I had any complaint about the East Indian community here, it would be like, damn it, when are you opening up that restaurant so I can support it and get some beautiful food to eat, like homemade samosas? I mean, this is my conflict in my own town. I just want some fresh damn samosas, right? And everywhere I live, like, I grew up near Vancouver, which is a wonderful, wonderful melting pot of different cultures and societies, and the way people think, and I've always been a fan of it. And I've never looked at someone and say, well, oh, that guy's from Iran, he must be a terrorist, or that woman is from Africa, well, she must not be educated. I've never looked at things like that in a racial point of view. I've always kind of embraced it because I know I have an opportunity to learn about something that I didn't know. And one of my favorite questions to ask people is, why did you come here? Explain it to me, so that way I can learn, because everybody has a beautiful story. you know Everybody has this reason, and it could be something as, hey, there were no jobs in my country, and I saw Canada was calling for doctors and nurses, and that's why I came. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
I really don't. I mean, in the end, bud, the one thing we all have to remember is, it doesn't matter whether you're part of the LGBTQ community, or whether you're black, you're white, you're Hispanic, you're Asian, you're Southeast Asian, or whatever. Guess what? We all bleed the same color. We all bleed the same color, man, and and that's what's important. I mean, getting on the road to humanity here, right?
Yeah. So let me ask you this: Did you support the Freedom Convoy?
Yes, yes, I did, and I'll tell you why. Uh, when Justin Trudeau first was elected in 2016, I voted for him, and I voted for his party, And I voted for a couple of reasons. Number one, and I mean this with no behest to my American friends or anything, but I thought the previous conservative government, after 12 years, was starting to get a little bit too American in their thinking. They wanted to bring in a bill called C-51, which was almost like a spying type bill that they give them permission to spy on Canadian citizens, much like what you guys saw down there with your radical bill right after 9/11. And I didn't. Pardon me?
The Patriot Act.
Yeah, the Patriot Act. And I didn't like that. Okay. And Justin Trudeau came in, and he's, relatively my age. He's a couple years older. And, he was just saying things that really resonated with me. And I just felt it was time for a change from the stiff, boring part of government where we needed things. We needed to make things happen. We needed some focus and, little things. It wasn't anything big. It was little things such as legalizing marijuana. Now, I will go on the record and say I don't smoke marijuana. I'm probably one of 12 Canadians that don't, right? But I felt I had a lot of friends
You're the only talk show host that I know that doesn't.
Yeah. Well, I had a lot of friends out there who were using marijuana for medicinal purposes. And, the studies that I read on marijuana, because when I want to learn more, I will study on it. I felt that it was, it's not a gateway drug. It's never been a gateway drug. True science has proven that. And that was one of the major reasons why I voted for Trudeau, was because it was a forward type thinking from these antiquated laws that didn't make sense anymore. Shortly after, though, I started having questions. After that election, when Trudeau won for the first time, I started having questions. It was a few months, maybe a month or two later, where he changed the lyrics to the national anthem, where they wanted to make the national anthem more inclusive. So we had this line in the national anthem called "All Thy Sons Command," and his party changed it to "All of Us Command." Now, I understand the reason why they changed it. They wanted it to be more inclusive, to allow everybody. But if you go back 100 years, that line, "All Thy Sons Command," was adopted for the idea that in World War I, 61,000 Canadian men died in World War I. So that line was, even though it was in the national anthem previous to that, it was kind of brought forward that line would be as a remembrance to those who fought and died in World War I. Okay, and 61,000 young men, made their stand for a country that was still fledgling. We didn't even have a flag back then. We were still under the British monarchy. But either way, we were a proud, nation, and we were forming into a proud nation. And when he changed the national anthem to make it more inclusive, I thought, uh-oh, what is going to happen now? And to this day, it's still an argument. The conservative, for instance, people who are more conservative in Canada do not sing "All of Us Command." They sing "All Thy Sons Command." Right? I mean, it doesn't sound like much, but it really does, affect what you're doing. I mean, I'm a firm believer that there's certain things you don't mess with. A national anthem, unless you're going from, like, say your country, like Russia did, when they expelled communism back in 1989, and they changed their national anthem to get rid of the whole Bolshevik revolution part of it. That was different.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, different.
But for us making a change for the sake of change, I didn't like that. And that's what kind of started off for me. And then, with his attitude towards the economy, and he all of a sudden out of nowhere started spending hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, giving away money to everybody and their dog in the world who is asking for it. I mean, there was one time where one of the late night talk show hosts was starting some sort of charity that Trudeau just happened to be watching, and he tweeted out momentarily, "How about Canada donates $50 million to this?" Well, what are you donating $50 million for? That's $50 million that could be used to put clean water in a lot of First Nations reserves, right? I mean, it just seemed like the minute he got into that position, it became an open checkbook.
Now, when you First Nation, you're talking about the native North American people, right?
Yes, Indigenous people, American Indians, except up in Canada. Here we call them First Nations.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about, I guess, about what's going on. I mean, to be honest with you, I was actually a little shocked at the silence from around the world at what we saw happen in Ottawa, I guess, last week I saw ladies with walkers getting trampled. I heard she died by horses.
She did not die.
I mean, but she was trampled by horses. I mean, if, and these people were just standing there, and a lot of them were just standing there praying. This is a peaceful protest. And, we had protests here in the United States over the summer of 2020 where, I mean, the reporter would be like, "Oh, this is a peaceful protest, on TV with buildings burning down behind him." I mean, these were full-blown riots and looting. Did any of that happen in Ottawa?
No. So,
I mean, if
there is a bunch of conflicting reports. Okay. The one thing I think we all need to understand is that the minute there is some sort of big protest that is planned, you are going to get the scum that are out there, the Antifa type people out there who are going to be there to raise their own platform and to raise havoc. There was one gentleman who has been filming every day out there on Twitter. Viva Frey is his name. And he basically put out on a tweet the other day that he had been out there absolutely every day and never saw any violence whatsoever until the police cracked down. That was it. And this was a protest that the organizers came from Alberta. Some of them, had more radical opinions than others, but the main thing was to try and get the mandates recalled. Everybody in other countries, including the United States, were having their mandates recalled. A number of countries in Europe had recalled their mandates and said, "Look, it's over. Let's get on with life." And yet, in our country, we just seem to be cracking down more and more and more. Trudeau, back in summer of last year, called an election, which he said he would not do during the COVID pandemic. And he won a second, what we call a minority government up here based on the pandemic. And it, this is where all of a sudden we started seeing, the war against those who were anti-vaccination and
anti-cure.
Or anti-cure, sorry.
That's all right.
And this is where all of a sudden people who were anti-cure were all of a sudden labeled as racists, white supremacists, lack of knowledge, lack of education, hated science, hated the population of Canada, were selfish, and basically Mr. Diversity basically stated that those who were anti-cure should be punished. punished in ways that they aren't allowed to travel, aren't allowed to eat in restaurants, go to hockey games, concerts, be in public events. One province in New Brunswick at one point, and it failed, thank goodness, actually tried to say that if you were anti-cure and had not had any anti-cure medicine at that time, that you were not even allowed to go into the grocery store to get yourself groceries. Now, if that isn't communistic right there, I don't know what is. And this is where
it worked. I think.
Pardon me?
I think it maybe it'd be different if it actually worked.
Well, I mean, look, I will say this. I chose to get vaccinated.
The cure.
Yeah. I chose to get the cure, sorry. Not because my government told me that I needed to. I got the cure because my business of Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited is bringing me to the United States. And in order for me to cross the border, I needed the cure. So, for instance, in March, I'm speaking at a UFO conference in San Francisco. In April, we're having our fan party in Las Vegas. And then in July, I'm speaking at a MUFON conference in Colorado. And for that, I decided that it was in my best interest, for the sake of my business and the fact that I knew that I was going to be traveling this year, that I would get it. I chose one brand over the other because I have had Bell's palsy in the past, and one of those Pfizer type of groups had been noted that their cure was linked to an escalation in Canada of Bell's palsy. This was all over mainstream media. So if you don't know what Bell's palsy is, it's a virus that you can get where literally you wake up and half your face is paralyzed. Okay. And I did not want to take that chance, because once you've had it once, you are susceptible to getting it again. And thank goodness I got it in 2003, I believe, and I don't want it anymore. Right? It's scary when you wake up and half your face is paralyzed and you realize that you may have had a stroke. But that's kind of what it was. So I chose another type of cure. I never had any type of fallback on that. I went about my day, but you know what? I know a lot of people in my community and my family who have chosen not to get it. And to me, that is their right to do so. But for me, the entire aspect of it where I lost faith in the entire system was in November. I drove down. My mom has been not in the best of health, and she was in the hospital, and we were going down. We planned on going down that weekend to the Vancouver area in order to see my mom and see my dad. And about the day before we were going to leave, there was a non-cure outbreak in my mom's ward of the hospital. So we couldn't see her, but we decided to go, and we took my dad out for dinner. And we were watching the hockey game, and there was a hockey game on in Vancouver, and watching the Canucks play, and they panned the crowd with the camera. And when I was in sports radio in Vancouver, I was in that hockey rink well over 800 times over my career, 900 times in my career. And I know that arena has recycled air. And I was watching people on the camera sitting down watching the hockey game, and none of them had their masks on. And yet when the intermission happened, when they go up into the stands or leave their seats and go up to go to the concession stand or the bathroom, these people put their masks on. Explain to me how 18,000 people can sit in a recycled air building without a mask on and they are safe. But when they go to the bathroom or they go to the concession, they're not safe anymore from the same air.
Well, it's all a it's all it's all a pony show, man. It's the dog and
Right?
pony show.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about control.
Well, and that's exactly it. We go to this fun center after that. There's probably 500-600 people in there, maybe 800 people in there. And we're playing mini golf and, taking my son around, playing some video games. And everybody's got their face mask on. But we were told at the beginning that there was, this thing was, transferable over touch as well. And yet they weren't wiping down any video games, right? And then they came out with this passport that you had to put on your phone, which I never did. To this day, I don't, where they were like, well, we're just going to scan to make sure that you're okay. But if there is an outbreak, we know how to get a hold of you. But we later found out through the mainstream media that the governments and the government agencies of the world of Canada were actually tracking people's movements through this app, where they went shopping, where they went for dinner, where they went for entertainment. They were literally tracking every movement. And this came out and people were like, oh, well, whatever. No, that's not okay. That's not okay when the government, any government of this world, can track where you are. Now, people will say, well, look, they can track you via your bank card. They can track you via your cell phone. They can track you via every way. So what's the difference? The difference is I make that choice. I make that choice. It is not mandated that somebody else makes that choice for me, And then you get into the whole mask debate of everything that kind of goes on. And I am not pro mask. Okay. Do I wear one? The only place I wear one is when I go watch my son play hockey, but I've had some difficult times walking into the hockey rink there. Okay. Where somebody who is non-qualified as a medical expert wants to scan phones to see whether or not you are allowed in the building. And I have my vaccination card that I got at the hospital, and that is not good enough. They say I need to have it on my phone. And I said, well, this card shows that this is perfectly legal. And they're like, well, no, it doesn't, because you need to have this app on your phone.
Well, what if you didn't have a phone?
Well,
there's no law that says you have to have a phone, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can get a little flip phone from the early 2000s. I can't put any apps on there.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I think that's ridiculous.
Then you go home. But that would be like choose anybody in your audience right now who is listening to this, who has zero medical, or even myself, who has zero medical understanding, being able to tell people whether or not they can go watch their son or daughter play hockey. That is ridiculous. Now, I want to preface this, Mike, real quickly. Okay. I am not someone who does not believe that the diseases are fake. I don't get my news from social media or from the mainstream news. I have a cousin of mine who is one of the smartest doctors in Canada and has lectured all over the world about infectious diseases. That is who I go to for my information. Okay, when I have a question, I go right to one of my sources, which is my cousin. And that's how, I've never been somebody who says, oh, this is a government thing. This is this was on purpose or anything. I asked my cousin one day about it, and I said, what's happening here? And he gave me the greatest answer that I have ever heard, which is this. He said, sometimes Mother Nature gets really, really pissed off with us and she fires back. And he goes, that's what's happened here. Because,
I'll say this. It has come out though that I mean, it is a real disease. I agree with you, but it was made with gain of function research in a lab in Wuhan.
Well, you know what? I would tend to agree with that. Okay, how it got out though, we don't know.
Yeah. Oh, that
there's still a lot of argument about that.
Yeah.
Right.
I do believe that actually it's starting to come out that it has been has been man-made.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you have to admit though, that, I mean, us here in the United States, we had, every year for the past 10 years, we had 200,000 people die a year from pneumonia, and all of a sudden, 2020 and 2021, we have none.
Right.
I mean, where did they go? What happened to those pneumonia deaths? I don't know what happened in Canada, but here in the United States, if a hospital said you died of COVID, they got $60,000. If they ventilated you, they got 50 grand. I mean, they were morticians were getting a ton of money. People were coming in that were being killed in car accidents. If they had COVID, then they'd be ruled a COVID death. But all they died in a car accident and just happened to have it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're manipulating the numbers, and it's to push this stupid the cure, right? And then they go.
There is some argument about that. There is some argument about that. I mean, I have I think we all have a friend of a friend who has had that happen. Right. But I mean, in the end, how are you protecting yourself? How are you protecting your family? Look, when everything went into lockdown the first time, I was okay with that.
Oh, no. I was scared. All those videos. Remember all the videos coming out of China? People walking down the street, falling over dead.
Mm-hmm.
When did that happen anywhere else?
No, I mean, how about when the videos on the news of them digging trenches in New York for all the bodies?
Yeah,
because I mean, we've seen that. I mean, look, I'm not a disease denier. What I am is a bullshit denier.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to with everything. The disease is real, no matter if it was man-made or naturally made. There's a big issue that's going on in the world regarding it. However, I know up here in Canada, as things start to wind down around the world, we're seeing this division across the country, which the truckers finally said, we've had enough. We've had enough.
Yeah, and Mary Kay says, breaking right now, they passed that bill tonight in Canada.
Yeah.
It just
that doesn't surprise me. And
you explain to us real quick, and I don't mean to interrupt, but we're kind of running out of time. What did they just do?
Well, in a minority government like we have here in Canada, Justin Trudeau's party does not have the power to vote on anything on their own. So what they did was they teamed up with the third party in power, which is called the NDP, or the New Democratic Party. And the New Democratic Party would have voted for the mandate or for the Emergency Act to go through. The Conservatives were against it. The Bloc Québécois were against it. And so basically you go by the majority, and that's how he was able to get it. Now, the New Democratic Party in a minority government really has all the power in order to sway any vote, and that's exactly what's happened. And unfortunately, what this does is this gives basically Justin Trudeau a communist type of rule where what he says and does can overrule absolutely anything, and it's a dangerous time here. It's very dangerous.
Yeah. How do you think the Canadians are going to handle this? I mean, it
We're going to
seems
see.
like this is insane. Like they're freezing bank accounts of people who donated $20 to, to the trucker movement. Like if you're a Canadian and you're sitting at home, and they haven't done it here in America yet, but and when I say America, I mean United States. They haven't done it in the United States yet, but it's coming here, guys. What's happening in Canada is coming here. We've been saying it on this channel for months now. What was coming, it was coming here from Australia. It's coming here from it's now in Canada. It's on its way. It's coming. It's coming to the United States. We're going to have to deal with this. I mean, to freeze somebody's account because they donated $20 to peaceful protesters is, I mean, you couldn't get more tyrannical than that. I mean, if Ronald Reagan were to see this going on in Canada, he'd call it for what it was. I mean, if we saw the Chinese people treating the Chinese government treating the Chinese people the way we saw happen up in Canada this past week, they'd be all up in arms calling human rights violations. Dave, I mean, I'll be honest with you, man. You know, Canada is like you guys are our brothers. I mean, if you need us to come up there, I mean, we'll have to come up there. We'll come up there. We're not going to let you guys fall into communism. But I have a feeling that we're going to be fighting our own battle here as well.
Well, it all depends on what happens. Okay. So, I mean, looking at the vote right now, it was 185 to 151, which means that the Emergencies Act gets pushed through for 30 days. You can thank the New Democratic Party for supporting the Canadian Liberals, Federal Liberal Party, regarding that. The Conservative Party and the Bloc Québécois voted against it, and that's how it was able to get through. And now the Emergencies Act, which is the updated version of the War Measures Act, has only been used 3 times in Canadian history. Previous to this, it was used in the First World War, the Second World War, and the 1970 October crisis, where the separatists in Quebec started rioting and trying to make Quebec a sovereign nation. That was called in by Pierre Trudeau, who was Justin Trudeau's father. And this, though, I mean, the thing that's disgusting to me is this, okay? What was happening in Ottawa, there were not any reports of violence. The police were not arresting anybody at that time. It was a peaceful protest. Yes, there were idiots, and let's be very clear here, okay? Because somebody is bound to take my words here and flip them. All right? Yes, there were idiots and morons there who didn't deserve to be there, who were flying swastika flags, who were flying anarchy flags, okay, who were flying Confederate flags, which is a no-no up here in Canada. All right. But the problem is this: when they were taking pictures of politicians who were trying to find the idea of the people, and there happened to be somebody, one of those morons that was walking with a swastika flag, immediately it was, well, you're supporting Nazism and you're supporting white supremacy. No, that's not how it works. Okay, let's see the video. Let's see the video of that politician supporting that. The truckers, for the most part, were extremely nonviolent. The protests were extremely nonviolent. They had bouncy castles for kids. They had hot tubs set up. They were giving out food to the homeless. They were cleaning up garbage after the big events were happening. Okay, they were doing a ton of things. Okay, and then the liberal side started calling for that this is Canada's insurrection. Not one protester went into the Parliament buildings. Not one. They all stayed where they were supposed to stay, which was behind the gates, to let the political process be what it is supposed to be. All right. Then this moron, who's our prime minister, started calling anybody who supports these are a fringe minority of white supremacists, of racial Nazi fascists, uh, um, and all of this. Yet we had a big portion of our truckers here in Canada are of Sikh or East Indian descent. They were in Ottawa. They were providing food. There was posts all over social media of um, of Sikh temples that were providing food, shelter, water, sleeping quarters, showering quarters for the um, truckers heading to Ottawa. I mean, there is so much propaganda that has been spewed, and unfortunately, the people who aren't there, who are all very woke, are the ones saying, well, this is a lie, this is a lie, this is happening. Well, yeah, it is happening, but to what extent? And we're not looking at the big picture anymore. We want to be offended so badly right off the hop and get so politically charged that we're not looking at the bigger picture of everything. Anybody who is calling the truckers, the Flu Trucks clan or racist or anything along those lines, geez, there was a lot on Twitter about the East Indian truckers or the Oriental truckers or the African Canadian truckers that were there as well. It was an absolute disaster, and the media was caught, and it makes me sick to say this, okay? But the media was caught numerous times using their own agenda in order to push the fact that this protest was evil. It wasn't evil. They were saying that it was anti-cure. It never was about anti-cure. It was about the mandates.
Yeah. It's everybody should be able to make their own choice.
Yeah.
And what's that?
Absolutely. Right? Look, in my 48 years of life in this country, I have never, ever, my friend, heard the word racism, white supremacy, or any of that bullshit as much in my life as I have under the Justin Trudeau regime. And that's what it is now. It's a regime. I've never thought of my neighbor when I had East Indian neighbors, or my business partner in Spaced Out Radio who is East Indian. I've never thought of them as being lesser than me because my skin is white and his is brown. That's just such bullshit garbage that needs to stop. But we have a prime minister who has absolutely divided this country, and there is no turning back. Unfortunately, there is no turning back on this. And until he goes away, which is in the next election, or his own party, which seems to be turning on him, pushes towards him stepping down, this is going to continue. I mean, I've never seen somebody try to divide a country so illy and poorly as this person who is in power right now. And the fact that the New Democratic Party has supported the Trudeau government is appalling at that as well, because the New Democratic Party has a long history of supporting the little guy in Canada. If it wasn't for Tommy Douglas and the New Democratic Party, Canada would not have a universal health care system, which we all benefit from. They have been in support for decades for the unions, for the people who aren't of a higher financial status. They've been the voice of the poor, the destitute, those who are running from their own inner problems. And now you have that party, which has always been supported by the hardworking Canadians, the loggers, the miners, the truck drivers. Their own party has turned on them and voted for this Emergency Act, getting
Yep.
it pushed through. So, I mean, Jagmeet Singh, who is the leader of the New Democratic Party, okay, he's more interested in being woke and upfront with all of the TikTok people, rather than actually providing leadership for what his party stands for. This is what doesn't make sense.
So
All right.
how are your schools up there? Are your schools infiltrated? Do you guys have control over what they're teaching in your schools?
The good part about it is it isn't what you're seeing down there.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't have that. Like, I can only speak for my son's school. Okay, my son is in grade 3.
Okay.
Okay, and in his school, we don't see the. I mean, he has to wear a mask. Okay, which 99% of the kids are not wearing their masks properly. So why they even have to wear them, I don't understand.
Oh,
All
because
right.
well, the way it works here is if the school has a mask mandate, they'll get extra money from the federal government.
Yeah, I don't know if that's happening up here.
You should look
Okay.
in.
But I know, like, for instance, we don't have in my son's school, there's no pro Antifa type teachers or anything like that. And what we've seen happening, especially in California, we don't see that up here. Not that I have seen, or nor has it been reported on. Um, you know, but that being said, the teachers union up here is very pro liberal. They are very pro, um, starting their own um, way of thinking rather than teaching by the book. It's just not as noticeable. Like, I can't complain about my son's school. It's probably because I live in a rural area. I mean, he has one hell of a good teacher who my son is learning a lot of really uh, good stuff off of. So I haven't seen what I've seen, happening in the United States.
Yeah. I mean, this is crazy. Let me ask you this, and I want to just give me a second, Dave, to give a shout out
Yeah.
to everybody. Do give a thumbs up, guys. Be respectful to each other, or like I'm gonna have to take you out of the group if you're I'm not gonna let some new person come in here and trash everybody that I've had in here for years and years and years. So that's not gonna happen. You will get banned. Be respectful to the guest and be respectful to each other. Also, give a thumbs up if you can. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell. And while you're at it, click the link in the description box below to go check out Dave's Spaced Out Radio. We'll let him talk about that in a little bit. If you guys have any questions, now's the time. We're talking about Canada and what's going on up there. I have a lot of questions still about how the government is actually set up there. I mean, here in the United States, we have states, and we're kind of the United States. Dave, you guys have providences, but is that kind of like the same thing as what a state is?
Yeah, I mean, we have our own provincial governments, and they have their own ways of doing things. What they like. BC, British Columbia, where I live, is under a new Democratic Party, whereas the Prairie provinces next door, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, they have pretty much lifted all of their mandates. They have not supported the Emergencies Act. Ontario is lifting its mandates. Prince Edward Island is lifting its mandates. So is Quebec. So I mean, every province has their way of doing things, and but in the end, it all falls under federal jurisdiction, and whatever is happening right now is what's happening. The sad part about it is there's a bunch of people that that are proud, like reading Twitter right now. There's a bunch of people proud that they want this Emergencies Act passed, and I don't think they fully understand or comprehend what that actually means.
They've been brainwashed by the media, right? What kind of media do you have up there? We have CNN. Do you have competing news stations, or do you have one main news station? Or?
We have a number of. We have the federal broadcast company, which is called CBC, the Canadian Broadcast Corporation. We have CTV, we have Global, we have a number of different outlets that do provide coverage. But the media mainly up here, especially over the last decade, has really gone from telling quality journalism stories, and they've really focused on the I'm offended crowd, and that's kind of the way they have gone. I remember giving an example here of the way the media covers things here in British Columbia. Last year in my area, there were towns that were being evacuated due to forest fires, and we had some super fires burning around here, and I wanted to get an update. So I was watching one of the British Columbia media outlets. They did a story about 45 seconds long on the entire province. At that time, there were over 330 forest fires burning. They did a 40-second story on a wrap-up of where the fires were and the hot spots and the danger points were. And then they followed it up with a 3-minute to 4-minute story about an impromptu fashion show in Vancouver that shut down one of the streets. And they were talking about how wonderful this impromptu fashion show was. Right? I mean, it just shows to show the priorities. I mean, you have people losing their homes. You have people losing their businesses, their identity, their quality, their way of life.
Well, who owns?
They're all up. The CBC is government owned. The rest of them privately owned,
right?
Yeah.
And the other ones, who owns the other ones?
The other ones are all privately owned, just like CNN or Fox News would be with shareholders, right?
CNN's owned by Disney, or Fox is owned by Disney, and I believe CNN just got sold.
Yeah. But either way, it all comes down to the shareholders, right? Like you have Bell Media, you have Shaw, you have Rogers, you have, who's the other one? Major one.
It all comes down to they're probably owned by the deep state figures, really, right? They bought a bowl of media. Yeah. Same here.
Yeah.
We've got quite a battle in front of us, Dave.
Yeah, it's scary. It's scary right now, and the fact that that this has turned into a real social media war from people who are sitting in their condos, their $800,000 condos. Like it was announced last week, the average home price in Canada, average home price is $836,000 if you want to buy a home. $836,000.
That's the entire country. The average in the
across Canada, the average is 836,000.
Wow.
I don't understand where. I mean, look, there are people who they'll never be able to afford a home.
That's Canadian dollars, though, right? So that's like half American dollars.
Well, you're looking at about a 25% difference between your dollar and my dollar.
So my dollar would buy $1.25 in Canada, say?
Yeah, pretty much.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, but your guys' dollar is going to get, I guess, better than ours. I mean, unless you can find. Well, I mean, didn't Trudeau lose billions of dollars? Isn't there like billions and billions of dollars?
Yeah, we've never had $1 trillion debt until Trudeau took over.
Yeah,
we officially have. Taxpayers are on the hook for $1 trillion debt. Now, here's something funny for you. Okay, our fuel is produced in Alberta, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and we are paying about right now, dude, because of the increase in inflation, we're paying close to $8 a gallon for fuel.
That's insane.
Okay. So the fuel line, okay, if you were to see a map of the pipelines that come down, the pipeline for gas and fuel comes right about 3 miles to my west. Explain to me how, if the fuel is going right by me, that same fuel which goes by me costs me more. You got a troll in the room right now.
Yeah, I see it.
So I mean, it's ridiculous, but we'll see what the Senate says. See, when every law is passed in the House of Commons, it has to go to the Senate, and the Senate will vote on it. Unfortunately, our Senate, every time a government takes over, what they do is they restack the Senate so that way their party is holds more senators than the previous parties. So most likely it's going to go through. But I want people to hear this. I mean, they're saying it's just for 30 days. Just for 30 days. Well, guess what? It was just 2 weeks to hit the curb.
Yeah.
It was just 2 weeks. All right. It's just a couple weeks. It's just a couple of months. It's just everything. Remember these, it's just programs.
Are you guys energy independent up there?
Are we independent of what?
Are you energy independent? You make all of your own gas and oil and everything else?
Yeah.
I mean, you get
the problem with Canada is
oil up there.
We're an export nation. So I don't understand the stupidity behind this, but it's not like the US or, like every state down there is different. So for instance, a state like Texas uses its own oil to fuel and run the state. Canada's not like that. We export the majority of our gas, but for some stupid reason, instead of saving some for ourselves, we then import from the OPEC nations, which drives our gas prices. How this is smart business, I have no idea.
Yeah, absolutely crazy. All right, let me ask you this. Casual Conversations with GNA. Thanks so much for joining us today. They say, Conflict Radio, what does the bill mandate for Canada in regards to the cure?
Well, it doesn't. Hi, Gloria. It doesn't do anything. Everything is the same. The only thing that it does is it affects the citizens, and tightens things up for us for no reason. You got to realize 90% of Canada's population lives within 100 kilometers or 62 miles from the Canada-US border. The majority of the populations are also around big-time city hubs, whether it's Vancouver, Toronto, or Montreal. All right? Like there's 8 million Canadians living in the Metro Toronto area. Well, if you divide that, our population is only 37 million people. That's a good chunk of the Canadian citizenship right there. So, I mean, when you have support of those holding their point of views, which have become very liberal and very anti anything conservative, you get a lot of pull with what's going on with the population. Okay, so the people in Vancouver aren't going to have the same attitude as the people, say, where I live, which is a rural area. Those people in Alberta, which are very hardworking Canadian people, are not going to have the same attitude as people in Toronto, right? Because the people in Toronto, they don't understand. They don't understand truckers. They don't understand. That it takes these hardworking farmers and hardworking ranchers to get food to the grocery stores, right?
And it's a long way between towns there. It's not like, every 15 minutes there's a town like some places here in the States.
No, absolutely. You're absolutely right.
Between places.
I'm pretty naive. Okay. I've never had the money to do a lot of traveling. I've never traveled outside of North America. And, most of my travel has always been on the West Coast. When I traveled east a few years ago for the first time, going back, 14 years ago, I never knew how closely together all of these major American metropolises were. I remember I went to visit some friends in Pittsburgh. I didn't realize that Philadelphia and New York and Cleveland and Detroit were all within a 5-hour drive. For me, okay, if I'm in Vancouver, if I want, my biggest city to the east is Kelowna, which is in British Columbia. They're only about 200,000 people. All right, but they're a 4-hour drive away. If I wanted to go to a major city, I would have to go to Calgary, which is about a 9 to 10-hour drive. If I drive south, the biggest city is Seattle, 2.5 hours away. The next biggest city would be Portland, which is a 6-hour drive. The next biggest city would be San Francisco, which is about 14 hours.
Oh, so you're all the way on the northwest side of Canada. For some reason, I thought you were in the northeast.
No,
I know. See, this is the problem with I guess what we're facing. What you guys are facing is that Americans are so lost with anything that's going on up there. Let me ask you this: do you guys have the freedom of press there? Do you have freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom to
yeah,
your arms?
Yeah, I mean, Trudeau doesn't like guns. Okay, so he has really restricted over the last couple of years the type of firearms people can get. And, I've never been a firearms guy. I do not have my firearms license. I'm not a hunter because of the area where I live. I am very much about getting my firearms license only because I try and spend a lot of time in the bush. And I'll tell you, man, there's a lot of shit that could kill you in my area. Yeah. Okay. And I'm not talking people, I'm talking animals. And, some of the guns that he has taken away, I mean, he hides behind the idea that he's taking away these guns to get away from criminals. Well, guess what? Criminals aren't using long range firing rifles. Okay. Hunters are, farmers are. Yet they've been banned. All right. Handguns are a prohibited weapon here.
Did they try to court?
You just can't carry around a handgun. So for instance, you can own a handgun if you have a restricted firearms license, but the only place you can take it is to the range and back home. So for instance, you can't, let's say you decide you're going to go to the firing range to shoot off your 9mm Beretta. All right. You can't stop for gas. You can't stop at the grocery store. You can't stop at a restaurant with that gun in your vehicle. You have to drive it straight home. You have to. That's the law. And most Canadians, people always say, like Canadians don't like guns. We have the second most amount of guns in Canada next to the United States. Okay, guns don't kill people. Okay, it's the people behind the gun that kill people.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. But let me ask you this: with those laws he put into place, was it legal for him to do that? Did they try stopping him, taking him to court and stopping him? I mean,
the Conservatives did, but the court systems around here, our court systems are not like the US where they are based on political stance. Okay. Like for instance, our Supreme Court, it doesn't matter whether you're liberal or conservative or New Democrat or whatever. That makes no decision. They go by what the Charter of Rights and Freedom says. Okay. Somebody like Trudeau, he is very much getting out of hand. But as long as he caters, Trudeau knows that as long as he caters to Vancouver, to Toronto, Metro Toronto, and the province of Quebec, everything else falls in place for whatever he wants. That's all he has to do is follow up with those places. Okay. And be in the good graces. So it doesn't matter what Northern British Columbia wants. I mean, look, guys, this is one thing that I will give you an example. Okay, when British Columbia or when Alberta was burning in 2016, and Fort McMurray, Alberta, which is a big oil area, was burning, and the entire city was surrounded, Trudeau did not go there once to visit. We needed a prime minister who was going to be a leader. And the one thing I've always admired about the United States is it doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or whether you're a Republican president, when there is a disaster in the United States, the one person who stands up as a leader is your president, to go there and say, you know what, we're going to fix this. We're going to give you everything that you need. We've got your back. We love you. And that's it. We're going to support that. Not our prime minister. No. His attitude is, well, what can I do? What's the benefit of me going there? But if it happened in Quebec or if it happened in Ontario, he'd be right there. He would be right there if it's in one of his political areas. I mean, the guy is a scumbag, if you ask me. Right?
Yeah.
He hates the West, except for Tofino on Vancouver Island, where he escapes to go surfing. Our opinions don't matter. He is all about, where am I popular? He's popular in Vancouver. He's popular in Ontario, especially the Metro Toronto area and Quebec. And the sad part about it is the way the Canadian landscape works politically. Okay, give me an example. The Metro Toronto area has more electoral seats in the House of Commons than the entire province of Alberta. That's wrong. There's no way that one area, and they do it because of its representation by population, okay, which is understandable, but it also gives an unfair balance to the amount of seats in the House of Commons to Ontario and Quebec, especially, where the rest of the country, once you get past Manitoba on an election night, the election is usually over by the time you get to counting votes in British Columbia, where I live, because the majority of it comes out of Ontario and Quebec. And whatever way that Ontario and Quebec are siding, that's the way the election is going to go.
Yeah. Hey, I guess I got to start asking you some of these listener questions. I'm getting a little behind in the chat box. Vash wants to know, what sort of influence does China have in Canada?
Well, I think that they've been buying up a lot of real estate and businesses, and Trudeau has stated publicly, and there is video of it, where he states that he really admires a basic dictatorship that China has. I think that he is, I think the Chinese government, much like in the United States. I mean, guys, you look at the problems that we're seeing in the automotive industry right now across North America with the computer chips. If anybody's driven by any car lots, the majority of the car lots do not have inventory on new vehicles because of the computer chip shortage. That's because the North American car companies decided that they would get all their chips manufactured in China. And that's why we're seeing a shortage of vehicles.
Well, those chips are manufactured in Taiwan, I think. The ones that we're having the shortage on.
And mainland China.
Yeah. Yeah. All
right. I mean, it isn't a hatred towards China. It's just that labor costs less there. Right. I'm not making it political, but I think, the Chinese have done I know they have done a huge job in jumping housing prices in British Columbia for the last dozen or so years. And it's been very tough on many Canadians on where they can afford a house.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I was sitting here with a bunch of slave and child labor, I could probably make a bunch of things I could sell real cheap too. Vash wants to know, question, can we talk about the conflict of interest between the World Economic Forum and the Canada's government? Not seeing many questions, just trying to shoot some out. And now we've heard about this, how Charles Schwab said he had people in the Canadian government that he had control over. he actually said that, and that was actually brought up in one of your parliament meetings. I saw on the TV, and the guy just, the guy that sits in the middle there, he kind of deflected the questions away. Like he was like, I can't really understand you, off to the next question. Did you see that? Did you see either of those?
I did, and that has been a trigger point that really hasn't caught on here in Canada because people really don't pay attention. And here's the thing with Canadians, okay? Canadians, for the most part, still blindly believe their government and believe their media. The media really hasn't jumped on the entire World Economic Forum. Now, let me divide that for a second. The newspapers, like the Globe and Mail and the National Post, have covered that portion. Okay. Now, the people who will go against that say, well, the Globe and Mail and the National Post are very much more to the right oriented of the political spectrum, whereas the television stations are more to the left. More young people are not reading the newspapers. They're watching if they are watching news, they're watching more left-leaning programming like Global, like CBC, like CTV, and they really haven't covered the subject of the World Economic Forum. But it's unfortunate because I did hear that the people who are pulling their money out of their banks, I know a number of people right now who have pulled money out of the bank accounts because they're not sure what's going to happen. And they want some cash. I know in my town, there are, I was talking to somebody who works at a bank recently who said they have not given up that much cash in a long time. And there's a fear that in my town that cash is going to run out. Right.
Yeah.
But I live in more of a conservative town. Right.
The banks are freezing it. Yeah. I think if I lived in Canada, I'd be pulling all my money out of the bank too.
Yeah, it could be.
Allowed to buy silver and gold up there and have it as yourself,
yes.
and stuff.
Yes.
Well, that's what you're doing. Man, this stuff's getting crazy. Knuckle of V. Did I say that right, Dave? I think this is one of your guys. Conflict Radio official. Do you eat breakfast for dinner?
Oh, goodness. I do not eat breakfast foods for dinner, Knucker. You already know that.
I do.
You know, breakfast foods are for breakfast. Dinner foods are for dinner.
Yeah, but you gotta sometimes, right? Like all that's you want to eat something fast. You grab a bowl of cereal or make an omelet or something for dinner. You've never done that?
No. That's for breakfast. That's breakfast foods.
All right. Well, I mean, I guess he wants to know if I do. Yes, I do sometimes. So.
Well, you can't trust Knucker because he's just a troublemaker. Okay. Just a troublemaker like that.
George the Canadian says Canada is the line. Hold the line.
I would agree. Hold the line.
Why is it taking so long to realize you guys have been sold out? Too little, too late. This is.
I think that Snake. I think that goes along the lines of what I just said. What I just said about that the majority or the majority of the population of Vancouver, Toronto, Metro Toronto, and Ontario doesn't care because they know they have a government that caters to whatever they say, and the rest of Canada doesn't matter.
All right. What do you think about the whole Trudeau is Castro's kid thing?
I think I don't believe that. I think that is one of the conspiracy theories that gives the left wing a lot more ammunition. See, the problem that we have here is the media, along with the many parts of the population, look at the conservative people or conservative supporters now as a bunch of conspiracy theorists, and they only give enough gas to show what is happening with those conspiracy theorists like that. Okay. Or like the fact that, there's one person walking through Ottawa with a Nazi flag, and all of a sudden it's all white supremacists and violence and businesses are being destroyed. I would like somebody to answer me this. If businesses were being destroyed in Ottawa during the 3-week conflict before the Emergencies Act came through, why did we not hear about that? Okay. Why did we not see coverage of shattered windows? Okay. Why were the police downtown shaking hands with truckers and protesters? Why were they all sharing the same message? Okay. It doesn't make sense. It's all propaganda right now.
Yeah. Nicola Mazura says, "Nice job, Dave. Got to get ready for work. We'll listen later on the podcast. I feel sorry for us here in America, but I think I feel worse for you guys in Canada."
We will win. In the end, Canadians will win. Canada is a fighting, believe it or not, Canada is a very proud fighting country, and we will always fight for what's right. Even if it looks like it's the darkest of days, the maple leaf will never fall.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it's where do you think you guys are going from here? You think it's going to get?
I think what happens is when it gets to the Trudeau's going to continue to do some pretty dumb things. I think the new Democratic Party under Jagmeet Singh has absolutely ruined that party by supporting the Liberal motion. I think that in the end, when it comes down to the next election, that once this all kind of calms down, what we're seeing now, I think that Justin Trudeau loses the next election and goes bye-bye and probably takes a job with the World Economic Forum or wherever, and goes down in history as one of the worst Canadian prime ministers in our history.
Unless they steal your election too.
Well, let's hope they don't.
Do you use Dominion voting machines?
No. Our ballots are still counted by hand.
All right. Well, that might be something you got going for you.
Yeah. There's no voting machines up here in Canada.
All right. Snake Jones says, what's happened is Canadians are waking up to the fact they are under a communist dictatorship, a global one. FIPA will be your end.
Could be.
Let's
hope not. That's why we got to continue fighting and trying to get what we need out there. Look, I think it's important that I say this. I was talking to one of my radio stations that broadcasts spaced out radio, and I was talking to the owner of the station the other day, and I asked her point blank. I said, "Why are more reporters not sticking up for what is actually true and what's happening in Ottawa?" And her quote to me was, "Dave, I have talked to a number of reporters out of Toronto who are so afraid of losing their jobs that they have no choice but to cover this event the way they've been covered." Okay? That is a disgrace to journalism. Because journalism in the end is supposed to be the eyes, the ears, and the police of the public. It is not supposed to take sides. Journalism, like a court, is supposed to be blind. And that is not what we are seeing.
Well, that's not what we get here either. It's all a scripted event written by, probably the World Economic Forum. A Sapphire Elf says, "Do you think a civil war or revolution is inevitable, or do you think a restoration of rights would be sufficient?"
I don't see a civil war happening in Canada. I really don't. I do see that people are going to become more politically fired up once things calm down, and I see a restoration of rights coming. And let's hope that it's sooner rather than later.
All right, let me ask you this: what about these reports I've seen coming out this morning of the UN planes in Ottawa, where it's pretty obvious it looks like the UN has been flying in there pretty recently? Do you think that they were bringing in UN troops to dress as Ottawa cops to go and make all those arrests?
I don't think so. The reports that I got were, I did see the footage of those UN planes, but we also have to understand that Canada and the Canadian military has always been a giant supporter of the United Nations and has always had aircraft from the UN parked in Canada. From what I am hearing, the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the Ottawa Police, along with members of the Toronto Police Department, have been pushed up to Ottawa, and that's where the conflict with police is happening. But from what I have heard from the inside, that nothing like that with the UN has happened. I mean, I do have sources in Ottawa that I am going to be contacting this week to kind of get an overview of what's happening. Usually I'm talking UFOs with those people, but I'm allowed to ask some certain questions about what's going on there. And we move on, and I'll hopefully have more answers later this week.
All right. And Vash wants to know there were police brought in from different parts of Canada to Ottawa,
Yes.
right? Yeah, we did know that.
You got to realize the police, okay, are doing whether they agree with it or not, they are doing what their orders tell them. I mean, is it to support the Trudeau? Probably, but in their eyes, they're being told that it's to enforce the law. And I'm sure that there are a number of police officers out there, and I like to think a little bit higher of our police up here. I think there's still a respect for the police, but let's face it, there are some police out there who are power trippers, and that they like what's going on because they've been pretty much given the green light to beat the shit out of anybody. We saw that on a video where an Ottawa police officer was reaching into his SUV and absolutely throttling a guy in the back seat. Well, what we have heard since then is that police that police officer and a few incidents that have happened, including with the horses, are going to be reviewed by an independent firm that holds the police accountable. So we will see what goes out. And look, let's be honest here. There is a ton of lawsuits that are being filed right now, and there are a ton of investigations that are going to happen regarding all of this. We may not see what the overall ramification of it is as of right now, but I think it will be cleaned up here in the next number of months, where we're going to see a lot of this figure out what's going on. I mean, there's going to be lawsuits. There's already a lawsuit against the Canadian government and Justin Trudeau from the Canadian Civil Liberties Union regarding the Emergencies Act. This is all stuff that's going right to the Supreme Court, right? So we are seeing everything happen as we speak. We do have to be able to allow it to play out and see where it goes.
Yeah. And Mary Kay say that the Dominion systems were used in the last provincial elections.
Not here in British Columbia, they weren't.
So that's interesting. I guess they're bringing it in. Davy Jones wants to know. Davy Jones Locker says, when is the next time you're going out in the deep woods to meet the Bigfoot forest people?
Probably May, late April, early May, when the snow is fully melted, when we can get in there.
All right. And let's see here. I guess I'm scrolling. I'm trying to get caught up to the comments here. I appreciate you staying just a little bit.
We got lots of time.
All right. One more question. Have you heard new police chief is saying the police will be hunting down those who donated to Give Send Go Truckers Fund?
Yes. This is something that I am very discouraged by, because there was a computer hacker who didn't agree with the protester, or hackers that didn't agree with the protesters, who hacked the names of the people who donated to the Give, Send, Go, and they released them publicly. The Liberal government then took those names and immediately froze the bank accounts of anybody who was supporting the truckers. Okay, number one, in my opinion, this is highly illegal. because before the protest was considered a standoff and an illegal protest, they were allowed to donate anything to the truckers' convoy that they could, whether it was food, whether it was money, or whomever. I think that we are going to see a lot of trouble out of that. That's where I see a lot of the lawsuits coming out of, because there are a lot of Canadians out there who donated legally, and for this government to freeze bank accounts and potentially close businesses that were supporting the truckers. Like there's a gelato store in Ottawa where the lady donated $250, and the Ottawa police came to shut her business down because of that donation.
Yeah, I saw that on the news, actually.
Right? I mean, that is unconscionable behavior from the government, unconscionable behavior from the police, considering the lady was helping feed the police while this was going on.
Yeah. Well, and let's not forget too. They're also saying they're confiscating all these trucks and they're going to sell them, and the profits will go to Parliament.
Mm-hmm. Once again, lawsuit.
Yeah,
we're going to see a lot of lawsuits out of this. All right, and I think what happens is that Justin Trudeau has no chance. The only opportunity he has right now is to flex as much muscle as possible. And once he does that, it'll end up costing Canadian taxpayer a lot of money in these lawsuits.
Yeah. Well, Dave, hopefully, you know, I hopefully we don't go down this road too here in the United States as well. But I got a feeling we're headed that way, man.
Well, you know what? As we wrap it up, I want to say one thing here, because there's going to be people who listen to this who think that they're going to twist my words and things that I said. And I want to remind people, I am not an anti-cure person. I am an anti-mandate person. All right. I do personally have the cure, if that's what we could call it, for being politically correct for YouTube. Yep. Okay. I am not someone who is in denial. I am not someone who is, pro or against. I am just calling what I see down the middle, and what I see, it makes me highly uncomfortable.
Do you think it gets worse before it gets better?
For the time being, I think we're seeing we saw the storm, now we're seeing the calm, and then there will be another storm.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's coming, man. It's going to get a lot worse. Well, of course they're going to try to distract us all with Russia and Ukraine. So, hopefully Biden doesn't get his way on that one, because they're really trying to start shit out there. Dave, thanks so much for joining us today, man. Really do appreciate it. You want to tell everybody where they can find you and exactly what it is you talk about on your show, because it has nothing to do with politics.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Spaced Out Radio is my show. We broadcast all over North America and the world, based out of British Columbia here. We talk a lot about the woo, and we are mainly talking UFOs, cryptids, ghost stories, and we bring in some of the top experiencers and the top researchers when it comes to the phenomena. And we look to have a lot of fun each and every night on the show. And anybody is more than welcome to come on in and join our chat room and join our channel and hit subscribe. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, the links are down in the description box as well. A lot of times I'll pop in and be hanging out in the chat with Spaced Out Radio as well. So anybody see me over there, be sure to say hi. My wife kind of rolls her eyes when I get in chat rooms, and especially yours, Dave, because you'll mention me, and then she'll roll her eyes right away when we're sitting there listening and you say Conflict Radio. She's like, I roll.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Well, you know what? If I could just quickly say something, because with our show is a little bit different than a lot of the other shows out there. We don't go for the hardcore proof. We don't go for a lot of the, the answers that a lot of people look for. And the main reason why is because the majority of our audience is out there and they're kind of new to these topics that we are broadcasting to them. And so what we do is we just introduce the topics that they are wanting to get a little bit spooked and freaked out about in the middle of the night. And, they're not investigating this. So I think there's a little bit of conflict in people saying, why aren't you hammering for proof? Where's that proof? And all this kind of stuff. We just don't do that. Our format is a little bit different, where we just want to bring the spookiness back to the night and let people enjoy it and make their minds up for themselves.
Yeah, and that's what we do here. I mean, we like to listen to the guest, and everybody else can make up their own mind. I mean, it's not my job to verify what a guest says or have to prove what a guest says. I want to listen to that guest and what their idea is, and you're right. Everybody else can make up their own mind what they believe and not believe, right?
Absolutely. And that's kind of where we take it.
All right. Awesome. And I hopefully a bunch of people go check out your show. Who's your guest tonight?
Tonight we're talking Mandela Effect with Brian Stavely. He's a very popular YouTuber and Twitch host that really looks into the strangeness of the Mandela Effect. And this one really kind of messes me up a little bit because I love this topic. I think a lot of it is misremembering, but I think there's some instances where it just doesn't make sense.
Well, Mandela Effect is just kind of a quantum jump that we all do. I love quantum jumping in the Mandela Effect. Fascinating topic. Hey, Dave, hang on for a second, and I want to talk to you for a bit when we're done. Remember, everybody, you can always find us online. Just go to www.conflictradio.net. We're available on Spotify, Spreaker, Apple iTunes, and all of your normal podcast catchers. That's going to do it for us, guys. We're going to be back on Thursday with, I believe we're having Cisco from Journey Through the Gate Paranormal Portal podcast. We're going to talk to her about some really interesting things on Thursday. So until then, everybody, batten down the hatches and be safe.
Some aircraft that were clearing talks about some
Greetings and welcome to Conflict Radio.